Hi, this is Pauline from Mother Bunch Crochet, and today I'm going to show you how to make the Frankston market bag. So this is a finished Frankston market bag. So it's actually worked from starting from one gathered section here and then working the netting to across to the other gathered section, and then you will start working down the sides of the bag and making the straps. So if we gather all that netting part in, you can sort of see how the outside edge works. So the final part you'll be working along the edge of the netting, gathering it in and forming the strap, down the other side of the netting, gathering in and forming the second strap, and we just keep working around and gathering in those edges. So in the end you'll end up with a bag which has a nice wide opening like this. So I recommend that you go to my blog motherbunch.wordpress and have a look at the written pattern there as well, and use that to follow along with this video. So what you're going to need is any 8-ply cotton and about 80 grams to 125 grams, and you'll need a 5mm hook. So let's get started. We'll start off by making a slip knot. And then we're going to chain 18. Now we're going to do a row of half double crochet. So we want to work, the first one is going to go into the second chain from the hook, and here you want to work into the back bumps of the chain, which will give you a nice finish on your top edge. So that first one, just going into the second chain, half double crochet, and do that all the way to the end of your chain. So you should end up with 17 half double crochets. So go ahead and work those. Okay, so I've finished that first row. I'm just going to double check that my count is correct. Yep. Okay, so we need to do 2 more rows of half double crochet where we're just doing 1 half double crochet into each stitch, and I like to start with a chain 1, and the chain 1 doesn't count in your stitch counts, so you can go ahead and do that. Just 2 more rows of 1 half double crochet into each stitch. Okay, so now we should have 3 rows of 17 half double crochets. In the next row we're going to start expanding. So start off with a chain 1 and turn the work, and then do 2 single crochets into the first stitch. Then we're going to do 1 single crochet into the second stitch, 2 single crochets into the third stitch, and we're just going to repeat that pattern all the way across. So 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch, 1 and then 2, and so you should be finishing with 2 single crochets into the last stitch. So now you should have 26 single crochets in that stitch. So it's a good idea just to count and check that you've got them right at this stage, so you can avoid having to unpick later. Okay, so I've got the right number of stitches there. So now in the next row we're going to expand again. So start with a chain 1 and turn the work, and now we're going to do 2 single crochets in each stitch across. So you can go ahead and work those 2 single crochets into each stitch. and it's going to go quite curly here. Don't worry about that, it'll all sort itself out. Once we've done a few more rows, it'll make sense. So when you get to the end of this row, you just need to do 3 single crochets into the very last stitch, and that's so that we end up with 53 stitches in this row. So that's my 3 in that row. So at the end of this row, you can see when you lie it flat, this edge is now very curly because we've expanded from 17 stitches in the first row to 53 at the end of that 5th row. So don't worry about that, it'll all make sense once we've worked the next few rows. So we need to do 1 more row of single crochets, and this time we're going to just do 1 single crochet in each stitch. So that's starting with a chain 1 as always, and then just go ahead and work 1 single crochet in each stitch, and then we can start the netting in the next row. Okay, so you can see that it's even curlier now on the edge, but don't worry about that. That's the end of our gathered section, and in the next row we're going to start working our netting. So to start the netting, we need to do a chain 7, and this is going to count as a treble, and chain 3. And now we're skipping, so this is counting as worked into that first stitch from the previous row. We're going to skip the 2nd stitch and work a treble into that 3rd stitch. So to do a treble, you need to yarn over twice on your hook and then insert into the 3rd stitch. Pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the next 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. So you can see the start of our netting forming there. So now we're going to do repeats of chain 3 and treble, and we're going to skip 1 stitch in that row 6 each time. So our next treble will be worked into the 5th stitch of that row. So you can see there that I've skipped one single crochet between those 2 trebles. So again, chain 3 and do your next treble. So skip 1 stitch and the next one across. Chain 3 and skip 1 stitch, go work into the next one across. So you can see our netting starting to form, and so we need to do 7 repeats of these treble chain 3s. So go ahead and work those. Okay, so I've worked my 7 trebles, and I've finished with a chain 3 after that last treble. Now next we're going to make a double V-stitch, and so that's going to be made up of 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles, all worked into the 1 stitch. And where we're working down here into the last row, this time we want to skip 2 single crochets and work into the 3rd one along. So starting off with the treble into that 3rd single crochet along from our last treble. So we do 1 treble, a 2nd treble worked into that same stitch, then chain 2, and then work 2 more trebles into that same stitch again. So that's our first double V-stitch formed. And if you look back at that first section of netting that we did, we have should have 8 little squares that are now formed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to the double V-stitch. So now we're going to repeat this pattern again to form 8 more squares. So we want to start with chain 3, and then we're doing a treble. We need to skip 2 stitches after the double V-stitch and go into the third one. And then chain 3, do our next treble. We skip 1 stitch, go into the second one across. Chain 3, again skip 1 stitch, work a treble into the next. So keep doing that until you've worked 7 of these trebles. Okay, so it's a bit hard to see. If you try and fan this around, it's a bit easier to see the stitches that we've just done. So after my double V-stitch, I've done 7 more of these treble chain 3s. And now we want to do another double V-stitch. So remember that in the row below, this time we're skipping 2 stitches and working into the third one. And our double V-stitch is 2 trebles, chain 2, and then 2 trebles, all worked into that same stitch. Okay, our second double V-stitch. So now we're going to go back to our chain 3 treble pattern. So our next one, we're going to skip 2 stitches, go into the third single crochet, and chain 3. Next treble, we've just skipped 1 stitch, go into the second one across. And just keep repeating that chain 3 treble until you get to the end of the row. So in this section you'll end up with 8 of those trebles. So now that we've finished the row, let me just see if I can spread it out so you can see what's happening in this row. Okay, so we've got our 2 double V stitches, and then these little squares or boxes that have been formed by the treble chain 3s, and you should have 24 of those, and there should be 8, then you double V stitch, 8, double V stitch, and 8 on this side. So we're going to have the same in every row, 24 of those boxes, and we're going to make the netting 24 rows long. So show you how to do the next row, and then all of the other rows of netting are going to be identical to this row. So as we did in the last row, we're going to start with a chain 7, and that counts as our first treble plus chain 3. Now when we turn the work around, so we're going to do a treble, and from here on we're always working into the top of the treble from the previous row. So there's our first treble, and then we'll chain 3 and do our next treble into the top of the next treble in the previous row. And chain 3, treble into the top of the treble from the previous row, chain 3, treble into the treble from the previous row. So you can see here, you can see how we're forming the netting. So keep working like this until we get to the double V stitch. So just those chain 3 treble repeats. Okay, so now that we're at the double V stitch, we're going to make a double V stitch into just working into that chain 2 gap. So remember, we do 2 trebles, chain 2, and then another 2 trebles. Okay, so we've got the double V-stitch worked into the center of the previous double V-stitch. And then for the rest of the row, we just do chain 3 treble repeats, always working into the top of those trebles, until we get to the next double V-stitch. Okay, so I'm up to the next double V-stitch, and I've got my chain 3 here after the treble. So again, we're just doing another double V-stitch into that chain 2 gap. And so to do that, we do 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles. And then we're just repeating that chain 3 treble all the way to the end of the row, working into the top of our trebles from the previous row. So for your last treble, you want to work into the 4th chain in that starting chain 7 from the previous row. And that's the end of our row 8. So if I spread it out here so you can see what we've got. So again, in this row we should have 24 squares, 8 and then a V-stitch, 8 and then a V-stitch and then 8. And you're going to work 21 more rows exactly the same as that row 8. So then you'll end up with, your netting will be at that stage 23 rows long when you count from this first row. And after that we need to decrease and form another gathered section like this, and then do the straps and the border. I'm going to make a separate video to show that part, but for now you can just keep working repeats of that row 8 until you've got 23 rows of netting in total. So I hope you found that video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to my channel to see when part 2 of the video comes out. And the written pattern for this is available on my blog, motherbunch.wordpress.com, and you can find lots of other bag patterns and scarves and beanies and things there too. So thanks for watching. Bye.